Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, here with another episode of Total Breakdown, this time with a great battle between the High Elves of Aerocrastic and Dark Elves of Okosomes. I apologize if I mispronounced either of those names. Alright, as always we start with a conversation about composition and deployment, and as you can see, the Dark Elves keep things relatively simple, largely in the open, a little bit of sneakiness attempted there, but the High Elves largely stay hidden in these trees. So let's start with the High Elf deployment first. We've got Teclis in charge atop his horse. Up front we have 2 units of Sword Masters of Hoeth. In between them, the White Lines of Schrace. On the right flank, a unit of Phoenix Guard. Then at the back here, we have 2 units of Spearmen, 1 on either flank, and 2 units of Archers kept slightly apart just so they can't be occupied and bogged down in one swoop. Then up front, we do have the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, nice and far ahead just to get some shots off as early as possible, while the 2 Flamespire Phoenixes will fly around and provide some airborne support, fear, and terror. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Dark Elves. They are commanded by Malekith atop of his Black Dragon. Up front in the center, we have 2 units of Witch Elves. On either side of them, we do have the Harganeth Executioners. And then on the far flanks, capping the flanks off, we have the Black Guard of Nagron. And these guys are able to respond to any large units that might be coming in from the sides or from the rears. They can turn around and sort of take care of any of that aggression. You'll notice also in the center, we do have the Death Hag just behind the front line, able to provide some support, acts like a chariot, and also provides some extra physical resistance in the area around her, especially atop her altar. Then, off on the side here, as we noted earlier, 2 Harpies, able to dive in from the sides, shut down some range support, some range fire, as quickly as possible. And of course, with an artillery piece out there, that range fire is going to start right away. You can see the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower is pushing forward ever so slowly, targeting some of these units as the Dark Elves do have to respond. And of course, they're forced to respond as they don't have any artillery of their own, so they can't just sit there eating shots. The Flamespire Phoenixes, meanwhile, moving off to the side here, chasing after these Harpies. Of course, they aren't hidden in the trees, so deciding to chase after them and maybe shut them down as they do retreat, while the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower does open shots off, getting some damage in nice and early before lines even meet, focusing down on these Harganeth Executioners, trying to get that hurt done. But you can notice with the Death Hag so close, that damage resistance does come in, and it does provide some support, of course, a little farther now from the Harganeth Executioners, but providing that same support to these Witch Elves in case any stray shots do come in. You'll notice also the Flamespire Phoenixes, rather than chasing after those Harpies, have decided to swing back in. I think just in case Malekith tries to get too adventurous, they'll be able to push in, intercept, and shut him down if he decides to get very aggressive. Meanwhile, as the Dark Elf army does push forward, you'll notice the first little bit of magic kicking in just a moment's time, as these Witch Elves and the Death Hag all get struck by the Net of a Mintok. That's a spell we're very familiar with. Good job planting that nice and early, focusing down on some units that can be very threatening if they close that gap to the front lines. The Death Hag, of course, as a chariot, dealing poison damage, a lot of work being done there. The Witch Elves as well. When Murderous Prowess kicks in, Witch Elves get Murderous Mastery, which is extremely threatening. So holding these guys in place and causing a decent amount of hurt before they're able to close the gaps. Meanwhile, over here, Malekith does use the Gaze of Malice just to disrupt these Phoenix Guard, and then not a moment afterwards, uses Chill Wind as well. Not a bad call at all. Once again, Phoenix Guard over here, they have, rather than just Martial Prowess, they have Martial Mastery. Once again, a better boost given to them when they're above 50% health. So trying to take care of that nice and early, not a bad call whatsoever. Meanwhile, you'll notice we do have the Flamespire Phoenixes here turning around, chasing after Malekith now, but that gives the Harpies an opening to enter in from. And you'll see over here as well, Teclis does get struck by Doombolt, just waiting. It's a long cast time, but there's no real point trying to dodge it. It's hard to dodge. It will do a decent bit of damage. As you can see, it comes down and does about a quarter of his health, dropped right away. Now the White Lines of Schrace up front, diving into the Harganeth Executioners and 2 units of Witch Elves. Very precarious situation, while over here the Sword Masters of Hoeth dive into the Black Guard of Nagron, so doing a lot of hurt there. Meanwhile, over here the Flamespire Phoenixes dive in to try and take care of the Death Hag, while the front line does engage. The White Lines of Schrace do get hit by Rampage by these Witch Elves' ability, and of course that is a precarious situation, while the Harpies back here diving into the range support, trying to shut down the artillery and these Archers, but these Spearmen are right there ready to respond, dive into these Harpies, trying to shut them down once and for all, scare them off the field. Meanwhile, you'll see here, the Death Hag was able to penetrate the front line, get right back here, but since the Harpies are able to deal with that range support, the Death Hag does turn around and starts to give chase to Teclis. Not a bad call. Meanwhile, Fiery Convocation does come in for this frontline engagement here, trying to support the right flank, keep these Phoenix Guard fighting. They are very low on health right now, dropping quickly, so in comes that Fiery Phoenix, unfortunately just slightly mistargeted, not able to do too much work. So that's a little unfortunate there, but good attempt, good thinking. Unfortunately, though, as I said, the Harganeth Executioners and Black Guard of Nagron are happily chopping away at the Phoenix Guard. Meanwhile, you see Teclis is in a very precarious situation, being chased by the Death Hag, while up front here we do have Blade Wind going down. Unfortunately, a poor cast, targeting some units that won't really get affected by that, and as it travels down towards these Spearmen here, it does stop just short. So very unfortunate there. Bad luck mixed with a bad casting decision, I would say. But meanwhile, you'll see Teclis does drop very early in the battle. High Elf leadership has fallen. The Death Hag now able to turn around and get involved in some more serious situations over here, while the Harpies are back here to try and provide some support, and Malekith as well, chasing after some of these Swordmasters of Hoeth, trying to take care of them as they did do a number on the Black Guard. Right now, you'll notice, though, Murderous Prowess does kick in, and again, Murderous Mastery for the Witch Elves. A lot of hurt coming through right now. These Flamespire Phoenixes dealing with the Death Hag quite well, but up front over here on the right flank, you'll see the Hargoneth Executioners and the Blackguard of Nagaron very quickly able to cut through the Phoenix Guard and now dive into the Spearmen, and a bit of mismanagement here, actually. While the Spearmen, yes, are worth taking care of, any one of these units will be able to do that, especially with Murderous Prowess active. So, while both of these guys are diving in right now, one should have actually been sent in after the Spearmen, or after these Archers, or after these Archers back here. Just better use of resources. Meanwhile, off in the distance here, you will see we did have a Doom Bolt go down, and while it was targeting the Flamespire Phoenix, unfortunately, it did more hurt to these Harpies. So, a little bit of a bad decision there, focusing down on a unit so close to a low health unit of one's own. So, not the best of calls. But you'll notice up front here, some impressive use of the Witch Elves. Now, both of these units of Swordmasters of Hoeth are kept occupied by the Hargoneth Executioners and the Witch Elves because they're rampaging. The Witch Elves, again, with the Madness of Cain, are able to inflict rampage status on units, and this is a complete waste of resources, but unfortunately there's nothing the High Elves can do about it. Two almost half-health Swordmasters of Hoeth against one nearly dead Hargoneth Executioner, and soon to be two nearly dead Witch Elf units, completely unnecessary. One of these Swordmasters could have been sent back here for a nice rear charge, providing support to that right flank. But again, the power of Rampage completely destroying the control the High Elves have over their unit. Great to see that. Great to see a complete waste of resources there as a result of that capability. Meanwhile, back here, you'll see Malekith is diving into these Archers, trying to shut them down once and for all, while these Flamespire Phoenixes do decide to take matters into their own hand, especially on this right flank here. Malekith, very dangerous over here. Flamespire Phoenixes diving in, using Wake of Fire to try and break these guys. Unfortunately, it's not the easiest thing to target when their lines are so thin. A lot of those bombardments are missing. They are causing some morale damage, though, but of course, these Blackguard and Hargoneth Executioners are having a good time slaughtering these Spearmen, so they're able to stay and fight, willing to stay and fight. Flamespire Phoenix is not really able to do much there, unfortunately. But now they turn around and get involved with these Harpies, trying to wipe them off the field right now. Good idea, just to make sure they're not able to return later and harass the Archers, etc. While up front here, you'll notice the Blackguard of Nagaron are all that are left against these two units of Swordmasters of Hoeth. That Rampage status will be removed shortly, but look at how much time was wasted here. These are by far the most performing units for the High Elves, and they've spent so much time just preoccupied against near-dead units. Now, kicking it up to full speed, you'll see these Archers are being chased by the Hargoneth Executioners as well as the Blackguard of Nagaron. Death Hag as well, busy over here dealing with these Spearmen, but all that range fire is coming in, trying to shut down these guys as they're giving chase to these Archers. These Archers are trying to stay alive, trying to get out of there, and you'll see these Swordmasters of Hoeth diving in for a nice interception there, holding these guys back, but unfortunately, Malekith is in the air, dives in, able to shut these Archers down as soon as he touches the ground, of course, but there are some high-tier units around, and the Flamespire Phoenixes do dive in as well, able to cause a decent bit of hurt to Malekith. And you'll notice also this unit of Hargoneth Executioners is struck by the Fury of Cain from the Death Hag, of course, giving them a lot of stat boosts, increasing their melee attack, their weapon damage, and putting them into Rampage. Unfortunately, as they are into Rampage, they're chasing after these Archers rather than staying involved against some of these more threatening units in the center here. They would have been much more helpful against some of these units like the Swordmasters of Hoeth, for example, finishing them off, and you'll see actually they do get terrified off thanks to the Flamespire Phoenixes. And as the Flamespire Phoenixes dive in, they're causing a lot of hurt, not only to health, but also to morale. But you'll see back here, we do have the Blackguard of Nagaron giving chase now to these Archers, trying to shut down that range support, while the Death Hag as well, diving in, trying to get involved, get that rear charge in there, scare these Spearmen off perhaps, do a decent bit of damage, but the Flamespire Phoenix is doing a lot of work here. Malekith's health is dropping very quickly, and off in the distance here, you'll see we do have these rampaging Hargoneth Executioners, as well as the Harpies, preoccupied with these Archers. One of those units could have been pulled back, while you'll see Gaze of Malice once again going down on these Spearmen, trying to prevent that approach, trying to prevent that rear charge from taking place. So great use of magic there, trying to stay alive, and you'll see the High Elves are routing. We've got these Swordmasters giving up, we've got these Spearmen giving up, two Flamespire Phoenixes very low on morale as Malekith decides to take to the air, come around, and try and get a rear charge on these Spearmen. Not a bad call at all, trying to scare them off with a rear charge, fear and terror on the field, but you'll see here these Flamespire Phoenixes just barely holding on as various High Elf units are rallying, willing to come back into the fray, willing to return to fight, but there you have it, these Flamespire Phoenixes in a very dangerous situation, very low on health. Malekith decides to get involved against these Archers, uses his Noxious Breath ability to knock these Archers out, completely routs them, destroys them, devastates their will to fight, and now turning around once again, having to deal with these Flamespire Phoenixes. They gang up on Malekith, willing to surround him and take care of him. Very low on morale still, but that range support coming in as well from those archers off in the distance. Malekith, again, in a very precarious situation, but these Flamespire Phoenixes as well, very quick to surrender at this point, very low on morale. Malekith dives in, I think, hoping to scare off the Spearmen as well as the Swordmasters of Hoeth, but a very dangerous spot there. The Flamespire Phoenixes just give chase. The Blackguard of Nagron are a little too far to engage the Flamespire Phoenixes, so if Malekith was able to just pull away this way and the Blackguard of Nagron were sent in, the Phoenixes would be in a very dangerous situation. You'll see that's sort of what's happening here. In comes another Chill Wind, just trying to hold these white lines of trace back, slow them down with Frostbite so they can't get involved as quickly, and you'll see Malekith does pull away. The Flamespire Phoenixes here are beginning to rout. There's one on its way out, not willing to fight anymore, and this other one as well now, routing, doesn't want to fight, leaving the field, but this first one does rally, so Malekith still not safe as these white lines of trace dive in, and you'll see now the Death Hag does use Fury of Cain on itself, rampaging, a lot of increased stats there, and able to shut down these Swordmasters of Hoeth and these Spearmen, but unfortunately it is rampaging, so no choice of what to engage, decides to go after those white lines of trace rather than these much more threatening units. Malekith now in the air again, bad call, Flamespire Phoenix free to cause damage there, nothing to fight the air force of the High Elves from the Dark Elves, so you'll see Malekith in a very dangerous situation here, very low on morale, decides to shatter, the entire Dark Elf army decides to shatter, and thus we have a Pyrrhic victory for the High Elves. An intense battle that came right down to the wire. Both commanders led their armies well for the most part. There was some mismanagement of resources by the Dark Elves, overcommitting against weaker units when Murderous Prowess was active, but overall, both sides fought well. I was particularly happy to see that two Swordmasters of Hoeth chasing after the Witch Elves, completely detached from the more important engagements, really goes to show what inflicting Rampage can do tactically. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I'll say it again, I think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to see great battles from the community. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.